So, this is a presentation about how Denmark has been dealing with its past for the last 3 centuries. In Denmark, the glorious past of the Viking Age has been very important in the nation building, both in the literature, in the arts, in the crafts, in painting. Everywhere we see it in Denmark, and both in the cityscape and in the landscape around Copenhagen, we experience it quite a lot. And it has been going on for the last 3 centuries, first in the elite, then in the citizenry, and then in the commoner class. In 1752 to 1760, there was a park at Lederborg near Roskilde, where a number of sculptures were made around Sancta Grammaticus Gesta Danorum, the fame of the Danes, English kings, Danish kings and queens. Here it is Margareta the first queen of Denmark, who made the great Kalmar Union in the 14th century between Denmark, Norway and Sweden. And it is very clear it was a public park because nearby there was a royal road and an inn. So it was intended to be seen by the public as a sort of very early theme park. And as I said, it's about the past. It's about the glorious past of the Danish-Norwegian kingdom and of the time when Denmark also controlled England. About the same time, we have Nordmandsdalen, the Wale of the Northmen, in Fredensborg Castle, the royal castle north of Copenhagen, where 70 sculptures of Norwegian fishers, hunters and citizens were placed in order to again commemorate the bond between Denmark and Norway. Denmark had been controlling Norway since 1386. Yet another example is Julianehøj. It was a Stone Age barrow that was excavated by the royals in Denmark in 1774, and afterwards it was made into a garden, a public garden with a runestone from Stensted in Norway, with stones commemorating Danish and Norwegian nobles and citizens, in a very early sign that the time was changing from absolute monarchy to democracy. The citizenry became more and more important. The citizenry became even more important after the Battle of Copenhagen on the 2nd of April 1801. This battle was a small part of the Napoleonic Wars, where Britain tried to seize the Danish fleet. The British fleet was not successful, partly because the reason for the war, a neutrality pact between Denmark and Russia, was cancelled right after the battle because the Russian Tsar died in an assassination. So the British left Copenhagen without the Danish fleet. They returned 6 years later, bombarded Copenhagen and took the Danish fleet. But the valor of the seamen who died in the Battle of Copenhagen on the 2nd of April 1801, right in front of the populace of Copenhagen, was such that very early on it was decided to bury all the fallen officers and seamen in one big mound in Copenhagen. And this is a painting from 1809 of the barrow with a view towards the city of Copenhagen. Actually, the entrance of the barrow was turned right towards the sea where the battle had taken place. So the dead seamen actually saw the place where they had fallen for the fatherland, for the country. The barrow was of course inspired by the many barrows seen all over Denmark from the Stone Age and the Bronze Age. But the obelisk and the arch of stones was of course inspired by the classical period. And this is a very interesting confluence of ideas that in Denmark we have both the classical part but also the Nordic past collected in the same monument. This is how the monument looks today. Today it is completely surrounded by buildings, but as I told you, in the past actually the view to the sea was quite clear. And it was the citizenry who had financed this barrow. It was the citizenry's barrow, it was not that of the royals or of the nobles. But fake barrows were also very common in Copenhagen. This is the two fake barrows in Frederiksberg Garden, which was let out around the year 1800. It was a royal garden, but again it was open to the public, and from one of the barrows in Frederiksberg Garden there is a straight view towards Copenhagen, right through Frederiksberg Garden and right to the center of Copenhagen. So these monuments were very important parts of the cityscape of Copenhagen in the early 19th century, and they all hark back to the glorious past that the Danes were now discovering. Fast forward a century. Denmark has become a democracy in 1849. It is now the citizens and the industrialists that dominate the cultural landscape. In 1897, the Carlsberg Brewery, founded in 1847, decided to commission a fountain to commemorate the 50-year jubilee of the brewery. And it was to be given to the city of Copenhagen, and the idea was to place it on City Hall Square. At this time, the new City Hall was being built, so in the end they decided no, we cannot have it there, because they were not quite sure as to how the City Hall Square would look in the end. So they removed it to a place right north of Amalienborg Palace, the royal residence in central Copenhagen, up towards Langelinie, the main promenade of the citizenry in Copenhagen. And there was a competition among Danish artists to be able to make this great fountain. And the three first placed ideas were all concerned with Nordic myths. And the winner was the goddess Gefjon, who, according to the sagas, was allowed by the Swedish king a certain amount of land, the amount of land that she could plow in one day. So she plowed through transforming her 4 sons into oxen, and then she plowed a large amount of land out of Sweden and had it thrown into the water west of Sweden, and it became Sealand. That's the idea anyway. And later myth has it that Sealand and the great Swedish lake of Vänern looks much like each other. So it was Vänern that she plowed out of Sweden, and it was thrown into the water. So much for the myth. But anyway, it's a central part of the cityscape of Copenhagen, a prime tourism spot right before the Little Mermaid. And it reflects the Nordic past in a classical way. It's a very large fountain, it's 36 meters long. So again, the Nordic past is reflected in this monument, even if it's in a classical way. Another monument from about the same time is the Løreblås. Actually, originally, the idea was that the 2 Løreblås who are today placed on one pillar was to be placed at the end of one of the main roads into City Hall Square called Vesterbrogade. And the original idea was actually to have the Gefjon fountain right behind them in the middle of the City Hall Square. Again, it's Carlsberg who commissions this group of statues in 1911 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the birth of its founder, E.C. Jacobsen. And actually, originally also, the idea was that there were to be two pillars and not one. But in the end, they ran a bit out of money. So they had to collapse the sculpture into one pillar. So actually, from afar, it looks a little bit strained. Anyway, what's very interesting about it is that still it's a bronze statue. It's placed on a pillar with a Ionic capital. But the clothing and the weapons and the lures, they are all from the Bronze Age. The type of sword, the lures, the type of clothes, and the shields are all based on actual finds from the Bronze Age. Not from the same time, actually. They are from over 1,000 years through the Bronze Age, so they have sort of telescoped the whole Bronze Age into one sculpture. And it was not placed at the end of a road, but it is still placed at the northern axis of City Hall Square, and is still a fixture in Copenhagen life. At the end of this presentation, I will go a little bit into the commercials, because the lures also spread into commercials. First in 1901, Lure Park, very well known around the world, especially in Britain, for the butter. And the lures are of course seen as a model of power, a symbol of power, of strength, of quality from Denmark. It's much the same with the Viking helmets. The horned Viking helmets were not real. There were no Viking helmets with horns. It would be a terrible idea. But the idea of the Viking helmets apparently came in the late 19th century, the Viking helmets with horns, because it was a fixture of the operas of the time of Richard Wagner and the Nibelungen Ring. All the figures there had helmets with feathers or horns. In Denmark, the symbols with the horned helmets for Stryns, a sort of pate, Gøl, which is sausages, and Kimber, which is an airline, are meant to exude quality and strength. And actually, in the case of Stryns, also partly the Danish concept of hygge. So therefore, the Viking helmets became very important in branding Denmark. And we also see it frequently at football matches today when we have Danish fans around. And to conclude this presentation, we again move out in the landscape outside Copenhagen, because in 1943 Ole Olsen was buried in his own Bronze Age barrow. Ole Olsen was the director of Nordic Film, which was one of the main film producers of the early 20th century in Copenhagen and in Europe. And he owned some land in Odsherred, about 100 km from Copenhagen. And he had this Bronze Age barrow excavated by the National Museum in 1935. And then he was buried inside the barrow with his own wife. The interesting thing is that it's a Danish Bronze Age barrow, but the idea of the structure clearly comes from Mycenaean Bronze Age graves of about 1600 BC in Greece. So we have sort of come full circle in the idea of how we use the past in Denmark to commemorate ourselves. Thank you.